Let's bring in Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. You know, he's a big supporter of Donald Trump, been on the trail with him a lot. The one thing, General, that we always notice about Donald Trump, especially over the last 2 weeks, he reacts to the news.
Yeah.
And the news now is law and order.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is unbelievable tragedy. So you got these, you know, two great police officers that, I guess the chief that just said looks like they were targeted, they were ambushed. I mean, the assault on our law enforcement professionals in this country is out of control. And I would love to see the leadership in our country today come out and say, look, this has got to end. Whoever did this particular shooting of these two great police officers, and I'll tell you, as we have gone around the country and in the, you know, in this experience that I'm, you know, having with Donald Trump, the law enforcement community is, you know, reaching out in such a big way to him because of the, you know, the compassion and frankly the support that he has shown to them to be able to say the kinds of things that we need to say. So this is just another tragedy, another example of the lack of safety that we have on our streets in our country for these police officers. My God.
You know, how did the anti-cop narrative get so loud?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it gets loud when leadership doesn't step in, okay? The anti-police narrative, the anti-law enforcement narrative, the anti-rule of law narrative gets louder when leadership does not step in. And the leadership at the local level, particularly by our chiefs of police, has been superb. It's the leadership from the White House. And you have to step in immediately when you see this assault.
Is it a political thing?
Well, you know, I don't know. I don't know if it's a political thing. But what I know is that when we have police officers being ambushed and killed in the streets of our cities and our, you know, in this country, it has got to stop.
Yeah, we need to say a prayer for each of those families.
We do.
And the cops that work in that area, because this gunman's still on the loose.
Right.
By the way, I would love for just building what you said, I'd love for the president to say something.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, come on.
I would love for him to say that, listen, it doesn't matter what color you are. If an attack on law and order is an attack on our society.
Right.
But let's just pivot to something about this election. With 6 days left, a couple of things happened. The FBI comes out and makes the announcement about the discovery of 650,000 emails. And then yesterday, responding to a Freedom of Information Act, they went back to 2001 and put forward documents about the Mark Rich pardon that Bill Clinton okayed. How important is that?
I mean, this just shows the continuation of the incredible dark cloud of scandals that you know, sits over the Clinton machine. I mean, I describe this as the largest organized crime investigation probably in decades that the FBI is having to go through. You're talking about, you know, the Anthony Weiner pedophilia scandal. You're talking about the reopening of a national security investigation against Hillary Clinton, who is, you know, 4 or 5 days now away from potentially being a president. Give me a break. I mean, when is enough going to be enough for these people, in addition to the WikiLeaks, in addition to more stuff that's going to come out? I understand that, you know, there's talk about the quote-unquote 33,000 emails coming out today or tomorrow. I mean, the 33,000 are probably in the 650,000.
You're
I mean,
right.
This is unprecedented. It's unbelievable.
You know what?
You mentioned the emails, and we were just learning this morning, Judicial Watch recently discovered that Hillary Clinton's server was the target of 10 hack attempts in a 2-day period. This was back in 2010, and the hackers were trying to log on as different people within her campaign, like Doug Bann and Uwe Abedi. What's your reaction? Right.
Well, you know, all this stuff, and then the things that we are seeing in the email discussions that are coming out. I mean, even those, it's disgusting. This is a disgusting way to run. I mean, I would never allow this in any military organization at all. Any type of the kind of conversations that are being had in these emails are just, it's unbelievable. I would tell you that the whole effort that's going on when they talk about the cyber attacks and the hacking, I mean, this has been going on for many, many years. So for any of these people to be talking about what has happened or wouldn't happen, I mean, to me, this is just unbelievable. So I mean, what we're facing is an incredible level of scandal, criminal behavior. I mean, there's serious criminal behavior that is directly related to Hillary Clinton's actions.
And that foundation?
In the foundation, I mean, everything.
You know what?
It's funny, but it's all coming together. This 650,000, it's like Anthony Weiner is going to end up, you know, tying all this together because he probably was using this as a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Well, apparently he is cooperating. We don't know exactly what the cooperation means.
Yeah.
But there's a story out this morning that, given the fact that he was sexting, he's in big trouble for sexting with at least one underage teenager. Now there's a report that he could have been the perfect target for hacking into her server because his then wife was one of the users.
Yeah, I mean, there's two other things here that I think, in my experience with investigations, which I've had quite a bit actually in the area of espionage and also just the extortion side. So you have elements here that are so dangerous for our national security because you likely have classified information, highly classified information in this 650,000. So if Anthony Weiner had access to them, that means there are many, many other people that had access to them.
Just
the President of the United States evidently had
that's the extortion.
The blackmail.
The President of the United States evidently had an alias too, and he was going back and forth with Hillary Clinton on a private server. But, General, when you talk about espionage and stuff that you've been involved in, it does bother me that we're doing this off Julian Assange's hack, because this guy's an international criminal. Yeah. Does it bother you?
Yeah, it bothers me, but it also, what bothers me more, it's not about Julian Assange, it's not about Russia, it's not about Anthony Weiner, it's about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is the one that made the decision to have an unclassified server in some closet somewhere to do government, very, very sensitive government business for 4 years.
And that's why Barack Obama should be the angriest. I hired you to do a job, and you did all this. Now, here's the other thing.
He should be, but in a way, Brian, he's caught. He's caught because the leaks of information that are coming out are going to show, unless they pull him for national security reasons, they're going to show that our president was in communication with Hillary Clinton, and in fact, he said he wasn't. He said he found out about it through the media. So
sure. And with the WikiLeaks stuff, this is where we are in society with technology now. This is like the whistleblower of 2016.
Yeah.
That's right.
General, the other thing is that what makes this so unique, I was thinking about it this morning, is that if you didn't like Al Gore, you didn't vote for Al Gore. You don't like Bush, you don't like Bush. You didn't like Barack Obama, you didn't vote for Barack Obama. You wanted to find out more information, but it was just, let's just find out more information to find out what kind of agenda he'll have.
Right.
This is different.
Yeah,
this is what are you hiding? How deep does this go? Yeah. How else are you involved? What do you really mean? How are you rigging the primaries in order to get the nomination? The more you look, the uglier it gets. Like it or not, Donald Trump is so transparent. He got himself in a lot of trouble between his tweets and what he says and answering questions maybe too candidly.
Yeah, I mean,
a little too honest, you mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, journalism is under attack this election for sure, because there's been so much. Frankly, there's just been deceit in your business, and I'm being very frank. This has become a social media election, and I'm telling you, you look at you guys pay attention to it. You report on it all the time. This is a digital election, and it has changed. And all this leak stuff. If it's showing one thing, is that you cannot hide anything. Yeah. And so it's like I've said it publicly. Hack my emails, because I would love to have somebody put out what I say. Because what I'm saying right here is what I say in my emails. I don't disparage people like, all the kinds of words that we're hearing said in the emails.
General, there's a brand new ABC Washington Post tracking poll that has just come out in the last 10 minutes or so. And apparently, on the question of honesty and trustworthiness, now Donald Trump eclipses Hillary Clinton. He's in front of her at this point, according to what was just whispered in my ear. Yeah. I got to ask you something that Mr. Trump was talking about out on the trail yesterday. Yeah. He said, look, some of you may have already early voted for Hillary Clinton. It's not too late to change your vote.
Right.
How many people, as you go out, have you met or heard say, I wish I could have a do-over on that?
Yeah, well, the other day.
Is this a big number we're talking about?
I don't know if it's a big number, but I think that people ought to have I'm glad that those states have the opportunity to show up to the polls, because I guess if you show up to the polls on polling day, if you've previously voted, you can re-vote. You can recast your vote, and I guess there's 5 states. I think that that's a big deal. I don't know what the numbers are going to be, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see what those numbers are, to see how many people re-voted.
If you look at the trends on Google, it is interesting, because no one's really checking it until the latest investigation drops on the 31st. Then all of a sudden a spike goes up for people Googling, how do you change your vote?
Right. So I think you're going to see a number of people recast their vote, and I think you're going to see it.
You can't explain it. You lived it, and you're getting briefed along with Donald Trump in many cases. but it's hard to take your eye off what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
ISIS calling for attacks on the West Coast, Mosul about to fall, we turning this over to Iran, the challenges of what's happening in Syria, Russia on the march, China beginning to expand. When Donald Trump looks at this, do you sense, does he know what he's getting into?
Yeah, he does. And it's, you know, this is an incredibly serious time for the United States of America, and it's a very, very important time for the U.S. to demonstrate leadership. We have such a deficit of leadership right here at home and around the world, and that has got to change. And Donald Trump, you know, that's his big message is make America great again, and his bigger message is we are going to start leading again.
Yeah, well, a week from today, next Wednesday morning, we'll know who the next president is.
That's great.
General, thank you very much.
Where are you heading now?
Back out the door.
You go back on the road with him?
Back on the road, yeah.
It's in a huge change of heart. One of Donald Trump's most prominent critics recently revealed why she'll be voting for Donald Trump after all.
This is no longer a choice for me on personalities because I'm not a fan of either one. What it is about is policy. The best person based on the policies and dealing with things like Obamacare still is Donald Trump. That doesn't mean it's an easy vote, but it does mean that I'm watching out for the people of South Carolina and I'm watching out for the people of this country, and that's who I will be voting for on November 8th.
Wow, our next guest says this is the lesson to every working American, building off what the governor just said. Here to explain is CrowdPack CEO and former advisor to UK Prime Minister David Cameron, Steve Hilton. Steve, you wrote a column about this, building off the Nikki Haley quote. Why?
Because I think that it goes to the heart of the choice that people have to make in the election, which is what are going to be the real-world consequences of the outcome for real people. If you look at what the Clinton campaign are doing, basically the whole campaign along, they've just been saying, don't vote for Trump because of his personal behavior. You saw even yesterday where she wheels out Miss Universe. There's no argument.
From Venezuela.
That's right. There's no argument about his policies, about his tax plan, his support for school choice, any of that stuff. It's just his personal behavior means he can't be president. Now, if you're rich, you can afford to take that view because, to be honest, if you have a President Clinton and the Democrats and more of the same economic stagnation, it doesn't really affect you. Your life is going to be fine. But if you're a working American who's really struggling to pay the bills, you don't find the job opportunities there, you're worried about the future for your kids, you can't afford to have 4 more years of the same economic stagnation, and that's why you've got to put the real impact before personal behavior and really look at policy.
You're the professional Politico, but if I'm a candidate and I hired you to finish off my campaign, and my best closing argument is how bad the other guy is, I think I'm a failed candidate. It's all they're talking about is how thin-skinned, he doesn't pay taxes, and look at how he views women.
It's really embarrassing if you think about the fact that this is a person, Hillary Clinton, who's basically been plotting and scheming for this for 30 years. And right a few days before her big moment, she hasn't got a single inspiring message about the change that she will bring to real people's lives. She's just slagging off the other guy. It's really kind of embarrassing. And I think when people think about, well, when I come and vote, and I really have to think about the impact of my vote on real life, that is the key, crucial factor.
So many people looked at Donald Trump and say, just prove yourself electable. And he kept tripping himself up. For the last 2.5 weeks, all he does is talk about policy. He was getting cheers on policy yesterday and barely brought up emails. Fascinating as we look to see the close of this campaign where most national polls have it within 2 points.
It's exactly right, because all along, right from the beginning, when Trump has been talking about the issues and about real change in real people's lives, he does well. And so when you have, like we saw a headline in the New York Times not long ago, which is, how could anyone vote for Trump?
Yeah, you write there in your column, how could anyone vote for Trump? And you come back is that really your best argument for voting for Clinton?
That's right. How could anyone vote for Trump? Because they don't want to, they literally can't understand how anyone could support a candidate with those personal characteristics. But that's because they don't want to engage in the real argument about what difference is going to be the result of voting for Trump versus Clinton on the economy, on schools, on healthcare, where he's got the message of change. And all she's saying is basically you're going to end up with more of the same, which has left the rich richer, but half of America earning less today than about 15 years ago.
Who would think a month ago we'd be talking 6 days out, we still don't know who's going to win. But that is exactly the case. Steve Hilton, great to see you. Good job.
Less than a week to go, 6 days until Election Day, and Democrats are still standing by Hillary Clinton despite her latest FBI woes.
Has she made mistakes? Of course, so have I. There's nobody in the public arena over the course of 30 years that doesn't make some. But she is a fundamentally good and decent person who knows what she's doing and will be an outstanding president.
So, are some Democrats just in denial for a fair and balanced debate? Let's bring in the vice chair of the National Diversity Council for Trump, Brunel Donald Shea, joins us from Chicago, and Fox News contributor Jamu Green, who was a 2008 Clinton campaign advisor. Good morning, ladies. Thank you both for joining us.
Good morning. God bless you, and God bless America.
Indeed. All right, Jamu, let's start with you. We just heard the president say Hillary Clinton has made mistakes in the past. You know, ever since the Comey surprise of last Friday, a lot of people are going, I don't know. And in fact, some of her support has weakened a bit. What do you think?
I think that there were 70,000 activists and volunteer shifts booked this weekend for the Hillary campaign, and for the last 4 days of the campaign, they have something like 750,000 shifts booked. It's interesting to ask if Democrats are in denial. Donald Trump's last salvo to the American people are, one, you can change your vote.
Which is true.
Two, he's having Mike Pence talk longer than him in Pennsylvania because they're still trying to corral Republican voters. This is a man who looks at preparing for anything, whether it's a debate or get out the vote. He looks at it with disdain. What do you do in a campaign? You raise the money, you build the ground game, and now he is trying to find voters, seek them out. The Hillary Clinton campaign, they are turning out their voters.
Okay.
They've contacted them, they know where they are, and they are focused on that. So there's no denial. It's just the execution and the final days, finally, of a pretty well-run campaign.
Indeed. All right, Jamu, in a number of states, you can actually change your vote if you have buyer's remorse. Brunel, what do you think? Are some Democrats in denial over Hillary Clinton's problems?
I believe they are in denial. And, you know, when you've got the top person, the president, who's supposed to be the example for the nation, telling us that this person is the most qualified with 5 FBI Bureau investigations, 2 open investigations, the Wiener pedophilia investigation, as well as the pay-to-play with the Clinton Foundation, as well as the emails reopened. When you've got our top person not saying step down, not, you know, leading in morality and ethics, why would you expect the rest of the party to fall in, you know, to do the right thing? But what I would say is this: the Democratic Party has sent out people to cause violence at rallies. That's been ratified. They have not given us any reason with this open borders through Hillary Clinton, with the Supreme Court picks that won't be conservative, with she's never created a private sector job in her life. Donald Trump has created over 60,000 private sector jobs. He's got so many reasons why he should be the next president, and we're not in denial. He's not under investigation. We're voting for the one that's not under investigation.
And Brunel would know something about Democratic politics. She's
not
been
FBI investigation.
She's been a lifelong Democrat. Jamu, I want to ask you about this new ABC Washington Post tracking poll that has just come out in the last half hour. And what it shows is that Donald Trump now is regarded by more Americans to be more honest and trustworthy. And you got to figure part of that is regarding the FBI stuff and everything we have learned from the WikiLeaks, which has been very embarrassing.
Look, Secretary Clinton is the first person to say that she has to work to continue to build and rebuild trust with the American people. And when you look at what is happening in every single swing state, and certainly the polls getting closer, that's something that the Clinton campaign was expecting. This is going to come down to who has better prepared to get out their vote. And Donald Trump, however you think about him, when you think of what moms say to their kids before a test, it's you study, you prepare, you do what you need to do for these last 6 days. And unfortunately, the Trump campaign did not do that, and that's why you have so many voters in early voting states who are basically giving their votes to Hillary Clinton. And the desperation of Donald Trump to say, change your vote? Have we ever heard anything so desperate?
different?
Listen, this has been a crazy election. Who knows what's going to happen in the last 6 days? But Brunel, I'll give you the final word. But you know, Jamoo's making the point that Hillary's got the apparatus, but at the same time, she's also got these falling poll numbers when it comes to enthusiasm. In the last week, Democrats, I think, are about 10% less enthusiastic about going to vote for Hillary.
Well, what I would say is we already know through WikiLeaks that she had already worked with the biased media, mainstream media. She worked against them with the pollsters, all of this stuff, special interest corporations, all against Donald Trump. My fellow Americans stood up for all the rest of us, and then we won't even talk about the FBI agents who are leaking information, telling this country, do not hire this woman. She is corrupt. She is a criminal. She is under criminal investigation. And so what I would say is this. You can't talk about ethics and morals when you've got FBI agents crawling all over you. And so what I would say to the American people is get out of your emotions, look at your fellow Americans, and vote for the country. Vote to save the nation from corruption.
And that's
when
the
we're
sound of
strong, the rest of the
desperation.
world is strong.
Everybody needs to go out and vote.
That's the sound of an American patriot. You better get you some research. You need to be reading WikiLeaks.
All right. Jamoo and Brunel, thank you very much for joining us. A spirited debate today.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless you.
A potential WikiLeaks bombshell now. Emails reveal that John Podesta urging the Clinton camp to dump emails. Yeah, dump emails. This on March 2nd, 2015. The New York Times story broke the story that Hillary was using a private server that rocked their world to conduct government business, remember? That night, her campaign chair, John Podesta, wrote to Hillary's former chief of staff, Cheryl Mills, saying, quote, this, "We are going to have to dump all those emails, so better to do it sooner than later." Here with us to react to all the WikiLeaks releases that we can in a very short period of time, Fox News contributor Lisa Booth. Lisa, welcome aboard officially.
Thank you, Brian. I'm so excited.
Yeah, as are we. What do you make of this? Dumped emails?
It's highly suspicious. And, Brian, here's the thing. It's the timing of it that makes it so suspicious. So this email from John Podesta came just hours after the New York Times had reported about her exclusive use of the private server. And then we remember, Brian, also the fact that then 2 days later came the congressional subpoena. And because of the FBI notes, we also know that Hillary Clinton and her team then deleted tens of thousands of emails shortly thereafter using BleachBit so forensic evidence couldn't recover it. So the timing is very suspicious, especially considering the fact that Hillary Clinton has tried to claim ignorance from the beginning.
And just to paraphrase, the camp came back and said, listen, we didn't mean dump, get rid of. We meant turn over to the government. That's what we meant.
Right.
Meanwhile, let's move on to another one of the documents. It talks about a top Clinton Foundation official dealing with something where we're up to $6 million. $6 million will change hands. Excuse me. Let me just read it exactly. If we do this, this is what he's saying, it will help us get to $6 million. I think he should call, meaning Bill should make the call.
Right, and this is just another example of what we see that certainly looks like a pay-to-play. And we've learned a lot from the Doug Band memo and the fact that the Clintons have used the Clinton Foundation both for their personal gain of $66 million if you're Bill Clinton, but also for the use of a private jet. And that's where this instance comes into play, where this gentleman did lend his private jet to Bill Clinton. And you also look at, it's been reported that the Clinton Foundation never reported this jet, the non-cash donations, on their 2011 tax returns.
Wow. And then finally, you have Robbie Mook responding to Citizens United coming out, meaning all bets are off from now on in because they won the Supreme Court case. Democrats publicly are upset by this, but privately, here's what they're going to say. Got to have there's a lot of state parties in the joint, so much money on the table. That's what it means. He doesn't sound too upset.
He doesn't sound upset at all. And this is the height of hypocrisy, Brian. And remember what we've also learned from the WikiLeaks, WikiLeaks release of emails. She's one person in public and another person in private.
Absolutely. Lisa Booth, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The legendary Reverend Billy Graham is often called the pastor to the presidents. He's met with every U.S. president since Harry Truman. But the Graham family tradition generally does not endorse a presidential candidate.
And now Billy Graham's granddaughter says that she is unapologetically voting for Donald Trump. In a blog, she writes, quote, "My greatest concern for our country is the direction of the Supreme Court. If there is only one reason for Christians to vote, this is it." Her name is Sissy Graham Lynch. She joins us now here in the studio with her exclusive announcement right here on Fox and Friends.
Thank you all for having me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
What is your big announcement this morning?
You know, I'm not here as a Graham. I don't speak on behalf of my grandfather. He's going to be 98 next week. The week of election. So I'm not here to speak on his behalf or my dad's. But to me, Christians have to vote. Christians right now want to say they can't vote for either candidate. We can't afford to sit out. This comes down to the Supreme Court and who's going to protect my rights as a Christian and my religious freedoms. I'm a mom. I'm coming as a mom who's concerned for the next generation. This isn't just an election for 4 to 8 years. This is generational when it comes to the Supreme Court.
Sure. Sissy, what are the issues that the Supreme Court will deal with in the next couple of years that really has you worried?
You know, me, it comes down, Christians are being persecuted here. My faith is in Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ alone. And Christians are being persecuted every day. We need people that are going to stand firm for our religious beliefs, not attack the faith-based institutions, and who are going to fight for the unborn.
What is your message to Christians that have a problem with both of the candidates and do say they're going to stay home?
I look at who Trump has surrounded himself with. He has surrounded himself with some godly men, Ben Carson, but he has chosen not just the counsel of Mike Pence, but as his running mate. Mike Pence doesn't just talk about his faith. He talks about his faith in Jesus Christ, and he is not ashamed of it. And I think Trump and Pence together will fight on the behalf of the Christian voice.
Sure. Sissy, I'm curious at your reaction to that Billy Bush tape that came out. NBC leaked it, showed some, before they got started, where they were in the bus, they were talking. Donald Trump said it was just locker room talk. Did that impact your decision in any way?
I don't know any Christian that makes excuses for it. It was vulgar and nasty. He has apologized for it. I've accepted his apology. But like I said, this is not about what he has said or what she has done. This comes down as a Christian, we have to get out and vote because we have to vote for the Supreme Court.
So all that other stuff is just noise. It comes down to you, the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court.
What about Hillary Clinton, who has come out and said she somewhat apologized? She said she regrets using the email server.
Regrets and somewhat apologized. But for me, it comes down to who's going to fight at the Supreme Court. Just in the last debate, to listen to her in those first 5 minutes, just candidly talk about abortion. This is murder. And as a
late-term abortion.
And we are on a national stage just talking about it, that it's okay and defending it. To me, it was so vulgar. I've been in Kurdistan in northern Iraq where I was at a mass graveyard where there was a bus full of unborn children and young children too, filled and buried alive. That's grotesque. And that was under Saddam Hussein. To me, there's no difference what we're doing here in the United States.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today here in New York City to announce that you are 100% behind Donald Trump. It all comes down to the Supreme Court.
And what a wonderful family. Your family has done so much for this country, and we thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm very proud of them.
You
should be.
Very nice. Sissy Graham Lynch. Travel safely back to Florida.
Joining me right now is Steve Kroll. He is from Monness, Crespi, Hart & Company. He's the managing director there. And Steve, it is good to see you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us. Is that a fair statement? The Fed earnings and the overall growth story is what markets are focused on, right?
100%.
How much is it election related?
A little bit the last couple of days, but I really think this correction that we're in right now started several months ago with the utility index breaking down, correcting almost 12%. It's rallied a little bit the last couple of days, but you had some very disappointing earnings on the industrial front. Honeywell, some of these really great companies that have found out that revenues just aren't there and the costs are up. So I think the Fed, it's interesting on the 10-year. The 10-year has gone up already 35 basis points, so it's done what the Fed's going to do. Remember, the Fed is only going to go from 25 to 50. The 10-year's gone from 138 to 181. So we've already had the increase. So that all combined has caused unnerving the market, and I think that this will continue a couple more weeks.
Meanwhile, remember yesterday in the Journal, Jeff Immelt said the reason that he wants to merge the Baker Hughes business, the energy business, with GE's energy business is because he's betting on an industrial recovery. You don't see that happen?
No, I don't. It may happen eventually. No, I just think we have a earnings report card that we do on companies, and it's really it's disappointing to see that industrials and autos and retail are not participating in this recovery the way they're supposed to. On the other side, the banks have continued to do better than most people expected. So we're getting real mixed messages from the economy. There's deflationary aspects out there. So we just think that after this correction will be over. It's not going to be dramatic.
You said deflationary, but core inflation last quarter running at the highest level it's been in 2 years, and wages were up 2.4%. And if the Fed's going to move once, maybe more, they're clearly concerned about not like plus 2% inflation, but inflation stirring.
Well, there definitely is, and you're seeing pockets of it. But you take the various industries. Retail, you have deflation in retail. Money management, you have deflation. Oil, you've had, it's come from 110 down to 38. Now it's rallying a little bit. Lately, now it's coming down. So
yeah,
we
45,
see,
we're back up to 45.
45, right. So we see that the longer-term aspects, that we're going to continue to have lower inflation than most people think.
What do you think's behind this economy that's sort of stuck in neutral?
I think people are concerned. They're frustrated. I think New York City is a good example. Sales tax, business taxes are down about 20%.
Tax revenue.
Tax revenue. So basically what's happening is that people aren't spending money, businesses aren't expanding. You're seeing more retail vacancies now than you've ever seen before. It's taking longer to rent stores.
Why? Regulation or just hangover from the last financial crisis? I mean, why?
A hangover. I think it's a sluggish economy, and there was some optimism at some point, but people are pessimistic now. I think the election has made people much more pessimistic on whatever side you are on.
And a lot of it's online, too, in terms of luxury retailing. Luxury retailing in the last few years has really taken off online. Yep. And small store owners and even some of these major retailers, these department stores here in New York City, they can't afford the rents based on what they're able to sell.
No, they're using the retail stores now as more like billboards. And you're right, online has really taken over in terms of all aspects, electronics, other goods, and hard goods.
Cheaper. Yeah. So we got the jobs number out on Friday. What do you expect, and what's sort of priced into the market, and how would you be allocating money right now, given that?
Well, I think the non-farm payroll number is going to be a non-event. I think that the thing to get through is all the earnings, and the earnings have been okay, but not what people are expecting. I just think that the market right now has a couple of more weeks of a corrected period here, and we probably will get to down 3% on the year. So that's another 4 or 5%.
Wow.
And I just think that you buy the good companies that have the good earnings and raising the dividends, but the problem is you're getting a game of musical chairs right now, so you're losing health care, you've lost industrials, you're losing, you have Chevron had a good number and Exxon had a terrible number. So it's really a case-by-case basis, and it goes back to the old days. I've done this 46 years of stock picking rather than all of a sudden saying the market's cheap and the market's not cheap, and it's a very difficult period. Most of our really good clients are not doing that well in the market, and that usually tells you that the market is unnerved, not the clients.
And so, final question here, real quick, on the election. Do you see a performance, can you predict? If Hillary is the president, what happens to the market? What happens if Trump wins?
It's hard to predict. I don't want to say what my prediction is. I switched from a Republican to a Democrat this year for the first time, but I think under Trump, short term, it will go down. Under Hillary, probably stay flat to down a little bit. It's very disappointing for everybody because we should probably have two better candidates. But I think the most important thing to the market is really earnings and buying good companies. And the Congress will have a check and balance on the political people going forward. But I still focus mainly on earnings.
Of course, that's going to drive markets.
Right.
And we know you're expecting a down market. Steve, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Steve Kroll is there. And be sure to welcome back the unpredictability of this campaign and the campaign trail taking a toll on small business. A new study is finding that the uncertainty level of small business owners reached a 42-year record high in October. The uncertainty is preventing small business owners from making decisions like hiring and investing ahead of the final jobs report before Election Day. Joining us right now is the National Federation of Independent Businesses President and CEO, Juanita Dugan. Juanita, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for having me.
And the state of small business is? Characterize it.
Well, you just said that Americans are losing sleep over this election, and that's particularly true among small business. The NFIB Small Business Economic Trends is coming out tomorrow, and the uncertainty index is at an all-time high. It's the highest number we've seen since 1942, and it's directly related to this election.
Why?
Well, because small business owners are always waiting to see what government's going to do to make it harder to do their jobs. And normally in this survey, when you ask them, are you going to invest, are you going to hire, are you going to buy inventory, they say yes or no. It's very unusual for them to say, I don't know. And those people who are responding, I don't know, are off the charts now. And it's clearly because they are worried about the actions of government. They do not know what's going to happen in this election.
But Juanita, it's Dagan McDowell. This is a decline in entrepreneurship that has happened over decades, literally. That the percentage of businesses that are less than a year old is now in the single digits when it used to be in double digits. In the most recent year, we have businesses being started up at near record lows. So it's something bigger than just kind of election anxiety.
There's no question about that, and it's a very good question. We know that now the birth and death rate of businesses has flipped. There are more deaths than births. This is a terrible sign for the economy. And when the uncertainty index is where it is, nobody's going to make any business decisions. It will paralyze the economy. And that is, you're right, a bigger structural issue with the economy. When you consider that small businesses, 97% of businesses in the United States, half the payroll, this is a deep concern, and we see this being played out in this record high number of uncertainty.
Juanita, it's Don Peebles. One of the things I think that I'm a real estate developer. I started a small business that is now a mid-sized business. And one of the challenges has always been getting people to understand the impact of tax increases on small businesses, because most small businesses pay their income taxes at the individual level. And so while a reduction of corporate tax rates would have a positive impact on larger businesses, small businesses feel the burden of any kind of tax increase at the individual level. Are you finding that taxes are dragging money that would be reinvested by small businesses and entrepreneurs back into their businesses and creating more jobs? Is that being an issue that you see that's slowing things down?
That's exactly right. Small business owners are most worried about increases in taxes, this ball and chain regulatory program that has been out of this administration for 8 years, and the increasing costs of Obamacare. This is one of the reasons why NFIB, our main concern in tax reform is to create a single business tax rate that would make sure that small businesses pay exactly the same rate as large corporations.
Yeah.
Right now, you're right, they pay a higher rate.
This is a very important point. And I'm trying to find the road to economic growth in Hillary Clinton's economic plan. Is there a road to growth? Because what she wants to do is raise taxes, that's going to hit small business, raise wages, that's going to be more expense, and build on Obamacare.
Yeah, what happens is that's a disproportionate burden on small businesses. Most jobs in America are now created, in the private sector, are created by small businesses. And I run a business, and the unpredictability of the cost of health care is astonishing. I work for $1 a year in my company, and I got a 1099 for like $6,000. And it was because of my health care policy was considered a Cadillac policy.
Wow.
And I'm actually taxed for it. And I couldn't believe it. I got the first time from our payroll company that manages our payroll.
That's incredible.
Yeah, isn't it?
So, Juanita, is small business for Donald Trump since he wants to lower taxes for small business?
Well, Donald Trump has adopted our plan, the NFIB plan, for a single business tax rate, and we're very excited about that. But at the same time, he's also signaled that he would prefer a raise in the minimum wage. A $12 raise in the minimum wage would give us a job loss of 1.8 million jobs.
He said he wants to leave it up to the states, right? He wants to leave it up to the states?
That is my understanding, but his proposal is actually a little more vague about the way he would do it. He's also signaled that he wants an increase in paid leave. We have some concerns about the way he structured that. So we're very excited about the small business tax rate, and we want to make sure that that is one of the central features of tax reform in the next Congress.
Yeah, well, certainly it would move the needle on economic growth. We know that. Juanita, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Maria.
We will see you soon. Coming up, special forces entering the outskirts of Mosul and taking the state television building. Joining me right now is the former U.S. ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. Ambassador, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
This is the first time Iraqi troops have set foot in Mosul in more than 2 years. How significant is this? How would you characterize the fight against ISIS right now?
Well, it's a part of their continuing advance, but let's face it, this has a lot more to do with American air power pounding on ISIS for weeks in advance of this than the Iraqi army. And while we should certainly celebrate any defeat inflicted on ISIS or any retreat they're forced to make, this battle is far from over. And even if when the Iraqi forces win, which I think it's inevitable they will, and will be a defeat for ISIS, it will also be a victory for Iran. As the Baghdad government and the Shia militia continue to advance. It's not strengthening the government we wanted to see in Baghdad after we overthrew Saddam Hussein. It's strengthening a satellite of the Ayatollahs. That's not good news.
Is this resonating with voters? I mean, President Obama spoke yesterday in Columbus, Ohio. He talked about Trump's temperament in relation to nuclear weapons. I want you to hear what he said yesterday. Ambassador, get your reaction.
We can't afford to give the nuclear codes to somebody so erratic. Hillary made a pretty good point. Yet, a man you can bait with a tweet is not somebody you want to trust with nuclear weapons.
Your thoughts, Ambassador?
Well, you know, it's the same slander that they've tried on other candidates before. I don't think it's making any impression. Certainly, I wouldn't support Trump if I had the slightest concern that he had the stability to handle the duties of commander-in-chief. So I think we're now down to the desperation level of attacks. I'd rather see a much more extensive discussion of national security, because I think it is going to be an issue over the next 4 years, whoever is elected president. And I'm deeply concerned that 4 more years of Obama's policies, which is what we would get with Hillary Clinton, are going to leave us in an even deeper hole than we're in now.
You know, one of the things that we keep seeing in the polls is that Donald Trump does better in national security when there's something active. And right now, we've seen that Hillary is doing better in the polls in national security. How do we explain the difference between the two of them?
Well, I think Hillary essentially is a clone of Obama when it comes to national security and domestic policy. While we're on the subject, there's a kind of legend out there that somehow she'll be tougher, stronger, an image assiduously courted by her flacks in the press, but I think not revealed by the record, not revealed by her 4 years as Secretary of State, where the biggest achievements, if you want to use that word, for the Obama administration were begun. The nuclear deal with Iran, just to name the most egregious failure. So to me, this is should be a discussion about whether you want 4 more years of Obama's policies or you want something different. And I think Trump, to peel everything else away, the central difference is that Trump has committed to rebuild America's military, which has been devastated by budget cuts over the last 7.5 years, and which undercuts our deterrent capability and the strength of our diplomacy.
So the current administration is saying that they think that ISIS is weakening and that they're defeating them. And so they're trying to say 4 more years is actually a good thing because they'll win.
Well, they have waited for 2 years to go back into Mosul, during which 2-year period ISIS, which is very sophisticated in propaganda terms, including in digital communications, has recruited God knows how many more terrorists, has deployed them, has laid the groundwork for more terrorist attacks, has increased its influence in countries all over the region, and prepared to exfiltrate its people if the noose closes. The delay, the slowness of the approach really has benefited ISIS in ways we can't even calculate. And I think it's a fundamental reflection that the president does not understand the ideological nature of the opponent that we're facing.
Ambassador, it's Dagan McDowell. Does I was in the room when we took down Osama bin Laden, does that resonate with the American people? Because that's the crutch that Hillary Clinton keeps leaning on when she's on the campaign trail.
God, I hope not, because it simply proves she was a bystander. That's wonderful. I watched on TV. Well, great. I mean, you know, I don't think it goes very far, but it just shows the paucity of her record, that she knew how to change the TV channel to the right one.
Well, you know, we also have, though, active situations now. I mean, North Korea reportedly preparing to launch another intermediate-range ballistic missile in the next 24 to 72 hours. The Clinton campaign says that Trump is unfit to deal with these escalating tensions, nuclear tensions with North Korea. What should the U.S. be doing here, and what would a Trump administration do in your view?
Well, I think fundamentally when you talk about nuclear proliferation, whether it's the Iran program, the North Korea program, the arms race in the Middle East we've seen develop over the past several years, the Obama-Clinton approach has fundamentally failed. These countries are making progress day by day toward that deliverable nuclear weapons capability, and people are just not paying attention to it. In the case of North Korea, the ultimate solution here is the reunification of the peninsula. That's what we ought to be talking to the Chinese about. We should have been doing it for the past 15 years. It really is a question whether you think America's place in the world, a strong American presence, leads to peace and stability, which I think is the Reagan approach and the right approach, or whether, like Obama, you think America is really part of the problem.
Yeah, Ambassador, what would you recommend the first 6 months of a Trump administration to start stabilizing the region? What would he do in that first 6 months, and what would you recommend being done?
Well, I'd certainly recommend that on the day he takes the oath of office, he announce he is abrogating the nuclear deal with Iran. It was a debacle for American strategic interest. He needs to make that clear, that it's really Iran that's the principal threat to peace and security in the Middle East. He needs to follow through on his commitment to accelerate the destruction of ISIS and to do it just as rapidly as possible. And he needs to make it clear to our friends in the region, the oil-producing monarchies of the Arabian Peninsula and Israel, that we are not going to see a continued decline of American interest in the region. I think the whole Middle East, North Africa from the Atlantic all the way over to Pakistan, is disintegrating into chaos. We have to reverse that. It's not going to be easy, but I think the president in his first days in office can really send the kind of political signals that will reassure our friends and remind our adversaries we are still the strongest power in the world.
Yeah, really great analysis, Ambassador. Great to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ambassador John Bolton there.